systems model of training and development, and it includes four interconnected steps. There is first identifying training and development needs, then second, designing training and development solutions, then third, implementing training and development solutions, and then fourth, evaluating training and development effectiveness. And this is a very simple model, a very clear model, but it does instruct us on activities that we should be engaged in each step of the process. And some would say that it's too simple. It doesn't take in enough considerations from the exterior environment, but it does have a wide array of applications, and it can be very useful for us to think about and organize our activities in training and development. And so I think it's something good for us to drill down on a little bit more. The first step in this model is identifying training and development needs. And so we do this through conducting training needs analysis. And in doing this, we should look at training needs at different levels of the organization. So we can look at the organization as a whole and strategic initiatives that need training and development for. We can also look a level lower at either division or departments. Oftentimes, that is a good place to look too, because there may be some strategic needs, but it's also great to connect training in a social system like a division or a department. Of course, we want to make considerations at the job level, because there we may have very specific information about tasks that need to be performed, and we might have metrics about performance that are very relevant to how the organization is performing. We need in the process to connect to data. And traditionally, what is done is oftentimes a survey asking members of the organization, what kind of training they need. And that is very useful, but also good to look at other data sources, looking at things like the strategic plan, looking at things like performance management data or other metrics that talk about organizational performance and may be indicative of training needs. And in the next step of the model, we are developing training and development initiatives. And here we have a wide array of different technologies and approaches that we can take. We have face to face training, we have computer based training, we have mobile training, we have gamification, we have all kinds of different modes. And so we have to consider what is best for the circumstance and be careful not to get complacent and only deliver what we're comfortable with. And we need to make sure that we're doing and delivering what is best for the context that we're faced with. It is good to approach any type of learning by trying to make it accessible to different people with different approaches to learning. But it's also important that we have some consistency and that we consider not just the learning style of the individuals, but of the organization and the context that it is within. Certain vocations and certain job contexts lend themselves to different approaches to learning. And part of learning is learning within a social context. And so we may want to consider there, what are the norms? What is the culture of learning within this organization? Another consideration is whether we're going to do training on the job or off the job. On the job training methods like job rotation, mentoring, apprenticeship, They can be more informal. They can either be structured or unstructured. They can, in many cases, be fairly inexpensive. Off the job training methods like simulations and business games give you some access to more expert knowledge, but they can be more time consuming. And if they're not curated in an effective way, there can be question of whether there's real transfer back to the job. So there's lots of different e-learning methods, and it's evolving all the time. This involves both synchronous and asynchronous types of communication. Often we are using a hybrid approach where we have some learning that is face to face and some that is e-learning. This is this blended approach where perhaps you're getting the best of both worlds, where you're allowing people to engage with the course material on their own time, but still having times where we're getting together and talking and solving cases and using different approaches, both synchronous and asynchronous, in order to engage with the learning. In some circumstances, we're trying to engage in rapid e-learning. That's REL. And one example that I saw of this is training that was happening for retail employees at their point of sale, is having a computer that also has the function to give training on different products and different sales campaigns as there is downtime. So there are ways that we can, through technology, squeeze learning in different places. So one of the advantages of e-learning is that it is more standardized and it is more flexible in terms of getting people to engage in it. However, there are disadvantages, and sometimes people feel that it's not as engaging because it doesn't have the human contact, and sometimes the technology is not as effective as we would like it to be. So we should be careful to follow guidelines for best practices in e-learning. It should be directed at people who have the requisite computer skills to be effective in that training. And it should be designed so we think about how humans interact with computers, and be designed in a way that draws them in rather than frustrates them. An example of that is kind of the 3-click rule for navigating. We should use multimedia and gamification to make the learning activities more engaging. And when we have the opportunity to blend technology with face to face, we can also increase engagement. Implementation of training and development should be a consideration in the design stage. From my experience, I would say one of the keys to having a smooth implementation is having support. Having individuals who are staffed with the responsibility of making sure that the details are there, and that the training is executed as it's intended. In the human resource development context, transfer of training is very important. We want there to be a continuous application of what is learned, the skill that is developed. We want that to be applied in the work context. In the fourth and final step of the systems model of training and development, we are focusing on evaluating training and development. When we think about the process of evaluation, we must put it in line with the preceding steps of the model that we have already been implementing. While the process begins with needs analysis and where we identify objectives for our learning, those learning objectives are then designed and there's some implementation, and we should hopefully be able to assess whether we're achieving the learning outcomes. All of that, though, does require data. And so, in the process of evaluation, when we are thinking about implementation and when we are doing needs analysis, of course, we need to be thinking about how we're getting that data. And we should always be thinking with the end in mind and how we're going to build that into the evaluation process also. Now, we do evaluation for many different purposes. Sometimes we're trying to find out what is the ultimate effect of the training. That is a summative type of evaluation. Sometimes we're trying to figure out whether the training is being implemented well or whether we need to change something in how trainees are experiencing the training. That's more of a formative evaluation. Sometimes we're really focusing on the learning and determining whether there's really transfer back to the job and is whether there's that link to performance. And then we can also sometimes be looking at outcomes that are more than individual level, but looking at group level outcomes that we hope to have an impact on. And those may be other things that we can get to through data that's available on an HRIS and that we could look at through analytics processes. Now, there's many factors that can be evaluated, and our problem oftentimes is not that we don't have enough data. It's what data should we be looking at because there's so much data. And so we need to be discerning. And so, which factors should we be evaluating? It really does depend on what the training is meant for. What are the objectives? So, we need it to be relevant. But we also want our measures of training effectiveness to be unbiased, to be reliable, and to be practical. A good model is Bloom's taxonomy. It helps us to understand the outcomes that we can expect from learning, and it gives us a language for setting our goals for training and development activities. Of course, we can also think of training evaluation models in terms of the types of outcomes, and Kirkpatrick's model comes to mind, and this has evolved over time. And primary level of Kirkpatrick's model was that we should evaluate the reactions of those who that go through the training, and of course but we want to go beyond that and see if they actually learn anything. Are they cognitively impacted by the training experience? And so we can give tests to assess that at that second level of Kirkpatrick's model. The third level gets into more of that transfer of training is, does it affect behavior back in the role that they're in? And we could look at tailored assessments of that or performance management type data. And finally, the highest level in Kirkpatrick's model has to do with what is the financial impact of the training. Does the organization achieve value out of the training? Do the benefits outweigh the costs?